The coronavirus pandemic has completely upended the day-to-day life. This has happened on an individual level as our routines has been abandoned in favor of social distancing. It's also occurring on larger societal, economic, and political levels. The immediate effect of the pandemic: postponed weddings, cancelled vacations, empty supermarket shelves, sinking the housing prices, salary cut, and layoffs, suggested no one will come out of this period without losing some things. But we are only at the beginnings. Right now, for one of the first times in modern history, huge swaths of the Earth's population are being told to stay indoors. Workers who can conduct their business remotely are. Group video conferences platforms like Zooms have bloomed. We spend our days switching back and forth between different inboxes, emails, family groups, chat, the WhatsApp groups, Instagram DMs. The bad screen and the good screens are now the same screen. There is a strong possibility that we will not suddenly revert back to full offices when the world turns back on. Our leaders have struggled to properly mitigate this crisis. British Prime Minister initially planned to build herd immunity at the cost of millions of lives. Trump downplayed the outbreaks. Mexican president ignored its social distancing policies, publicly hugged the mothers of Mexicans, the most infamous drug lord. And the Indian Prime Minister announced a total lockdown on the country, which resulted in a heartbreaking and dangerous mass exodus of migrant workers walking hundreds of miles home. In Japan, this October, the reduction in infections also prompted the central government to relax a rule limiting the size of crowds at sports matches, movie theaters, and other events. As we had long been in a severe situation, this is a relief, but I'm also worried that virus infections may surge again. People appeared less cautious about traveling and returning to tourist spots during the holidays, local stores and restaurants operators. The result of Americans' abdication will not only be European dominance or Chinese dominance, it will probably be on the long run greater disorder, the erosion of global rules and norms, and a more unpredictable, unstable world with fewer opportunity to buy, sell, and invest around the globe. In other words, it means a less peaceful and prosperous world, and one in which American influence will be severely diminished. The dollar towers above its competitors like a euro, and yet it seems foolish for USA to pursue policies that produce a desire to curtail Americans' power. Bypass USA and created a new arrangement, especially among Americans' closest allies. The most remarkable new effort to sidestep America has come from the Europeans in reaction to Trump's decision to pull out of the Iran nuclear pact and reimpose financial sanctions on Iran and anyone who does business with Iran because of the immense strength of the dollar. Few major companies are willing to engage commercially with Iran. The Europeans are therefore trying to create an economic mechanism that can bypass the dollar. The EU's foreign policies, other countries, presumably Russia and China, might join the effort, while the EU's effort to come to fruition. They would put a dent and the most significant element of the Americans' financial power, the unrivaled role of the dollar and the global economy. President Trump's speech, America First World View. He laid out an approach of pursuing narrow self-interest over broader global one, and privileging unilateral action over multilateral cooperation. He withdraws America from this global arena. The rest of the world is moving on without USA. Donald Trump seems to be hastening the arrival of a post-American world. Take one of his first major actions, pulling out of the Trans-Pacific Partnerships. This sweeping trade deal was an attempt to open long-closed markets like Japan, but also to create a grouping that could stand up to China's growing might in trade matters. The other 11 TPP countries decided to keep the deals minus Washington's, which simply means America will not gain access to those markets. Japan had a free trade agreement with the European Union, giving the opportunity to Europe that might otherwise have gone to America. When Trump cuts funding for various international agencies, he's playing right into the hands of Beijing, which has a long sought greater influence on these bodies. Similarly, the bizarre and continued absence of key America's diplomats, no assistant secretaries of state for East Asia and South Asia, no ambassadors to Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Egypt, South Africa, among others, means that America's interests are just not being represented. Both the federal government and state governments ran into a large number of regulatory barriers that needed to be suspended or otherwise altered in order to adequately respond to the COVID-19 pandemics. In many parts of the world, borders are closed, airports, hotels, and the businesses shut, and school canceled. These unprecedented measures are tears at the social fabric of some societies and disrupting many economies, resulting in mass job losses and raising the sector of widespread hunger. Much remains uncertain, but analysis says that the pandemic and the measures we are taking to save ourselves could permanently change the way in which we live, work, worship, and pray in the future. Envisioning that the post-pandemic world is key in ensuring we change for the better, not the worse. Everyone is sitting at home, and their windows to the world is through their smartphone. In the post-pandemic world, technology will be as ubiquitous as it is now, if not more, and the tech company will become even more powerful and dominant. That included smaller firms like Zoom and the big players such as Google, Apple, Facebook, and PayPal, and not just American firms, but also Chinese. Prior to this, we saw a period in which people were increasingly more cynical and critical of technology. But as the pandemic increased our dependence on technology, people will forget that hostility towards the Silicon Valley, at least in the short term. On the international level, there will be less corporations. The trade of nationalism and self-reliance will continue, especially as a fear of the external and foreign can be exploited by populists. Most states are challenged in their resilience economically, socially, and in terms of public health. The COVID-19 pandemic is showing us the huge economic cost when global trade, including transport, slowed down. It also demonstrates how dependent we are on the global supply chains, including for medical equipment such as masks and testing materials. When this pandemic is over, my sense is that global trade will resume it and become even more stronger, and any disruption to the supply chain that will be temporary. At the national level, this pandemic is forcing the many countries to reconsider their social policies, especially social protection and healthcare. In addition, there is an effort to help workers and the informal sector. If these policies or some variant of them persist after the outbreak, this will help reducing inequality. It's entirely possible that the people who attended the protest are getting sicker, while the people who are staying home and not getting sick at the same rate. We don't have the data to answer that question. If you are going to have an event, I'd rather you had it outdoors, and I'd rather you wore a mask. If possible, if it is still best to continue social distancing. Contrary to what some experts predicted, COVID-19 infection rates actually decreased in places that experienced BLM protest. Even when those protests had particularly large showing of people. Why there was no spike in COVID-19 cases could be that more people who were not involved in the protest staying at home than they would have otherwise. Fearing police violence or being swept up in the protest, it could be the fact that the events were outdoors. It could be that protesters were wearing the masks. It could be the fact that these events are being driven by young people, and young people are much less likely to be symptomatic. My hope is that the BLM movement is universal. If they are this way, but because the other countries are this way as well, we are all connected. And so when you think of racism, it's global. It's not just an American issue. So I would hope that anyone in any other countries would see it and understand their own privilege and how they benefit from systematic racism. If someone yells at something at you, yells a racial slur at you, you can walk away from that. But the systematic racism, it never goes away. Where you can work, where you can live, where you can go to school. If these things are unavailable to you, or your opinions are unavailable to you, based solely on the color of your skin, that is a systematic racism. The silence allows a person exhibiting the racist views or racist actions to say, maybe you don't support me, but you are not opposing me. We are in a time now where if you oppose racism and you oppose discrimination, then you need to be actively against it. Silence towards racism as compliance. This is not a new movement. They've been fighting for liberation for hundreds of years. Know that like our fight for liberation is your fight for liberation. They are fighting to end white supremacy and racism all across the globe, to end colonialism, to end imperialism. It's to end oppressive government and give all power back to the people. Show how the fight for Black liberation in America is linked to the fight for freedom and justice and liberation in Japan.